I, she said. What, she said, you, she said, ask, she said, me, she said. Before, she said, or, she said. Least, she said, not, she said, fully, she said, doubt, she said. Hang, she said. Around, she said. Mind, she said. Swing, she said. Back, she said. Forth, she said. Other, she said. Place, she said. Same, she said. Thread, she said. Line, she said. Intertwine, she said. There, she said. Now, she said. Different, she said. Now, she said. Then, she said. But, she said. Today, she said. I said. Feel, she said. Certain, she said. Existence, she said. Place, she said. There, she said. Words, she said. Stutter, she said. Sounds, she said. Grasp, she said. Letters, she said. Today, she said. Take, she said. Things, she said. Stride, she said. What, she said. Thing, she said. You, she said. Ask, she said. Think, she said. Think, she said. Thread, she said. Link, she said. Interpretation, she said. I, she said. Story, she said. Yarn, she said. White, she said. Soft, she said. Heard, she said. Ask, she said. I, she said. Should, she said. Come, she said. Or, she said. Least, she said. Done, she said. Thing, she said. You, she said. Ask, she said. But, she said. No, she said. I, she said. Haven't, she said. Haven't, she said. Listen, she said. Haven't, she said. Done. What, she said. What, she said. Asked, she said. What, she said. Asked, she said. Me, she said. I, she said. Should, she said. Back, she said. Should, she said. Have, she said. No, she said. What, she said. Wasn't, she said. Certain, she said. Another, she said. Place, she said. Mind, she said. Mind, she said. Thoughts, she said. Bind, she said. Wasn't, she said. Certain, she said. Wasn't, she said. You said. Two, she said. Dream, she said. Repeat, she said. Sun, she said. Loyal, she said. Sun, she said. Skin, she said. Tingling, she said. Sensation, she said. Below, she said. And, she said. I, she said. Think, she said. Sand, she said. But, she said. Wish, she said. Move, she said. Forward, she said. Along, she said. You, she said. Thoughts, she said. Expectations, she said. Foresee, she said. What, she said. Presence, she said. Here, she said. Close, she said. Always, she said. What, she said. Next, she said. Touching, she said. As, she said. Normal, she said. Walk, she said. To, she said. Great, she said. Think, she said. Not, she said. Think, she said. More, she said. Lately, she said. Regarding, she said. At, she said. Here, she said. Place, she said. View, she said. Away, she said. Days, she said. You, she said. Not, she said. View, she said. Same, she said. Without, she said. Me, she said. Stare, she said. intently, she said, decipher, she said, pattern, she said, melody, she said, find, she said, source, she said, thread, she said, plot, she said, hushed, she said, silence, she said, none, she said, spoken, she said, present, she said, not, she said, away, she said, linked, she said, maybe, she said, net, she said, not, she said, plot, she said, today, she said, sun, she said again, she said, burn, she said, but, she said, too, she said, much, she said, oh, she said, eyes, she said, shut, she said, sun, she said, clouds, she said, plains, she said, lines, she said, block, she said, empty, she said, restless, she said, waves, she said, come, she said, today, she said, can't, she said, impossible, she said, regret, she said, say, she said, but, she said, she said, can't, she said, not, she said, no, she said, another, she said, another, she said, never, she said, now, she said, regret, she said, no, she said, now, she said, now, she said, yes, she said, existence, she said, voice, she said, you, she said, belongs, she said, another, she said, body, she said, flesh, she said, now, she said, uncertain, she said, I, she said, whether, she said, now, she said, but, she said, half, she said, me, she said, drifted, she said, boundaries, she said, body, she said, liu, she said, rhythm, she said, stitch, she said, slip, she said, meaning, she said, material, she said, voice, she said, thread, she said, yarn, she said, thoughts, she said, through, she said, think, she said, it, she said, isn't, she said, be, she said, I, she said, discreet, she said, subtle, she said, slice, she said, voice, she said, wait, she said, time, she said, thought, she said, measure, she said, arrange, she said, when, she said, something, she said, anything, she said, not, she said, not, she said, stay, she said, here, she said, clearly, she said, try, she said, once, she said, should she said, no, she said, known, she said, wasn't she, said me, she said, what, she said, smile, she said, yaw, she said, ponder, she said, think, she said, see, she said, you, she said, barren, she said, another, she said, room, she said, still, she said, translation, she said, gone, she said, access, she said, again, she said, time, she said, wait, she said, sign, she said, appearance, she said, then, she said, hesitate, she said, jump, she said, occasion, she said, enter, she said, mind, she said, sharp, she said, guide, she said, glide, she said, walls, she said, room, she said, somewhere, she said, scenario, she said, repeated, she said, could, she said, I, she said, different, she said, angle, she said, within, she said, same, she said, room, she said, stance, she said, moment, she said, yet, she said, change, she said, step, she said, aside, she said, endless, She said,
I don't tend to give my performances titles or the sets of poems that I read, but for the purposes of today, I've called this Kinda. So I tried to gather together poems that all deal with kindness, the notion of kindness, whether thematically or directly or obliquely or in terms of the language. I met someone who was doing research on the modernist poets and had coined the term kindness as a way to describe their language, and particularly the language of Gertrude Stein. And it wasn't really to do with accessibility, it was more like a sort of openness, a sort of reaching to the reader. That's quite a nebulous concept, but I thought about it while I was putting these together. Healers. I encountered a scaffold outside the Holy Trinity Church in Vladimir, Russia. At first, I didn't notice her, slumped against the side of the church. She was pretty small for a scaffold, pretty unassuming. Her safety mesh was torn in places and sun-bleached all over and threatened to dislodge due to a forceful wind that was typical of the season. She was shaking. She was fundamentally insecure. She told me that good foundations are essential and that the men who had put her together hadn't taken advantage of the right opportunities. Now, each day, someone came by, called her unsafe and also a liability, and then left, failing to initiate the dismantling process that, yes, would have been painful and slow, but kinder. International visitors to the church blamed her for the mess of tools and rags on the grounds and for the fact that they could no longer see the church's celebrated mural depicting St. Artemy of Vacola, unusually pious, highly venerated child saint killed by lightning. His dead body radiated light, never showed signs of decay, and was in fact said to have effected multiple miracles of healing. I said comforting things to the scaffold, but she only seemed to lean more heavily against the side of the church. We are rarely independent structures, she said, before she dropped a bolt pin, which released a long section of tube, which released another bolt pin, which released several wooden boards, which scraped another tube and made an unbearable sound. This next poem comes in 4 sections, and it's 4 variations on the same piece of text that I found online via the search term public. Nolita. 1. Have we accepted that we cannot turn the secret hidden method of the audience? The test speaker quick steps in public and gives the audience his dirty tips. The problems in the audience sector can be defined as enclosed in a dresser in a field with a vision of modernism. Federal Garcia Lorca receives the audience in a public garden, a zoological garden of public choice. The audience have knowledge of the public body's combustion bill and the bookshelf personality of a toilet. A violent audience that threatens the public service in advance with the can-can. 2. The public is forever in fear. Public sectors surround the mind and face. Blinking in the public section can never be accepted. Federico Garcia Lorca is used to that. What a citizen. Public investigation is quick and shall decipher the public's interest. The public park, the public zoo, are public marks from private folds. The ministry offers the public milk and honey. 3. Public enemies review the public in public. Prompt and dingy creatures with prevalent interests in alternative public depiction. The public face of modernism was a dividing folder, a common folder that came into the public via Federico Garcia Lorca. The public model of science, fervent in public organ rations was always prevalent and hot. Its problem in the public sector can be defined as room for surrender. 4. The property always feared her comrades' eyes, the eyes that never winked, that cannot accept becoming, cannot advise becoming. The method cannot be extracted, becoming the enemy. Criticism is the speaker's quick step, the dirty typist. Define becoming. The science of public understanding, of private interest. Picture philosophy and her problems, an embraceable region becoming the commons of the face. The audience wants what the audience gets. A garden comes into use. Some follow the montage. Public choice, a model worth the arts subjects, worth the science, burning locations, character the private. Dear number 24601, the future is an eye that I don't dare look into. Last night I dreamed I was a ball of fire and woke up on the wrong side of the room. This is a recurring dream. I share an apartment with my twin sister. Enclosed is a photo of us on a tandem bike. I forget which one I am. Sometimes I wake up believing I am her, she is me, and there is nothing about the day to indicate otherwise. Weeks stack up this way. As a girl, I did not do well with other children. Unable to see the fun in games, I paid close attention to the weather, delighting in hail and not much else, save a prized collection of Hummel figurines, derived from the pastoral sketches of Sister Maria Innocentia Hummel, German Franciscan nun and talented artist. Her simple, peaceful works drew the enduring hatred of Hitler himself. You know, Hummel translates as bumblebee in German, and they say she was always buzzing around. What do you think? Do we grow into our names, or does Kismet know a thing? One name can mean too much, the other not nearly enough. The small things make a difference, like sitting on the white cushion as opposed to the blue. White is pure, of course, but my soul's been in the bargain bin since Russia and Lenin's tomb. I had a moment there, among the balustrades, and once that moment had expired, it graduated from a moment to a life. Poor Claire. On Sundays, I wander the villa with the dog and the other dogs. They keep to themselves, incurious as horses. One of these days, I smell something, and in the smell, I see a dead body, a plateau of cloud, a saint. At dinner that evening, I read one section of my summary, The Praise, aloud. It will be taken by a free periodical. One fat obscurity. A week later, Minaress calls me down to the forecourt. Halfway into the interrogation, I am made an orphan, a moment I've been halfway in search of. The weather makes me doubt myself. A vulgar cloud appears above Minaress, projecting over the begonia. Minaress goes on untroubled, but soon the obscure power of the cloud makes the begonia vanish for good. I willingly take my things and leave the villa with the logic that I'll be able to express my opinion, until now only tangible in the ways I styled my hair. The metaphors never took. I can't reverse the future. Val Minaress held the prophecies of our futures, discrete informations concerning everyone. In one vision, she told me I'd wished her many happy returns. The Saints. The Saints watch all our meetings from my first dream, remember? The one with all the fear, those flaming scrolls. They are fitful, jealous, not understanding, reckoning our exchanges in terms of hate. Perhaps they know how a phone call from you is a deathbed summons, how I'll take what I'm given. I'm trying to work it out, but the details are sketchy, like a drawing of a dog with a shadow is funny somehow, the latter having become equated with souls. You were so warm that night, they elected to speak through you, suggesting how you might solve your fever by way of an equation, how an offering is itself a kind of equation. The Saints too, what the saints do. The saints see through roofs and through the centuries. They see your thoughts, the future, your future thoughts, All of this at once and from a great distance. You can't but imagine it in terms of colour, perhaps a time-lapse sequence, fast heat. The saints manifest in burning homes. The homes are their minds, but they're also real homes. Love is air, worthless. Consciousness is just the idea that keeps you here. The saints cause drama, dump cylinders, wumping cylinders by the ditch. And the last few poems I'm going to read, they're all prose poems, and they come from a series that for a while I was calling Martyrs, but then that felt like a judgment of some kind, and I changed the title of the series to fanfic, because someone said that a few of these read like fan fiction, a nice accolade. But then I realised that I wasn't much of a fan of some of the protagonists of these poems, which are all based on real people. The first one is about Iris Robinson, who in Northern Ireland, where I currently live, is like a massive name, but no one seems to know who she is in England. She was a politician and is still the wife of Belfast's current First Minister, Peter Robinson. And she gave an interview on BBC Radio where she said that gay people were more heinous than paedophiles. And then the following week was outed as having been conducting an affair with a guy who I think was 16 at the time, which was, it should have been national news, but it's really bizarre. Okay. Iris Robinson remembers being taken on a trip by an aunt to County Fermanagh at the age of 6. It's there, in the vestry of a local church, that she recalls first encountering the English-French artist Philippe Homogenes Calderon's Broken Vows in the form of a framed print. Dating from the mid-19th century, the painting shows a woman, eyes closed, heavily clothed in blue and black. She leans wistfully against a wall beside a gate, beyond which two figures are only partially visible. The taller figure, a man, hands a red blossom to the smaller one, a woman. The latter's mouth and nose can be seen through one of the dilapidated gate's missing panels, though her eyes are barred by a supporting horizontal strip in the gate's frame. At the time, Iris Robinson retained very little of the picture, save for the wilting yellow iris occupying its foreground. Your namesake, her aunt had said. Years later, however, having rediscovered the image as a postcard in a museum gift shop, it became clear that the single iris flower, attached to notions of silent grief, was overshadowed by the painting's primary narrative of betrayal, and the ivy plant at its centre said in multiple descriptions of the painting to symbolise fidelity and wedded love. Iris Robinson bought the postcard version to keep close, stowing it in the rear pouch of her mauve leather-bound filofax. Looking at it now means looking also at the way the piece of card has caught time. Its edges are soft and indistinct, and a thick white threaded crease obscures a central section of the painting's gate, including a spot that had always caught Iris Robinson's attention. Located just left of the wronged party's right hand, the round could represent some kind of transcendental eye, the only eye visible in the painting, or a simple knot in wood. This poem's called Donegal because, once again, Sarah Jessica Parker owns a house in Donegal, which is near where I live, in NI. Sarah Jessica Parker finishes reading the script for Sex and the City 2. She looks at the clock, sets the script down on the floor beside the couch, and changes position, pulling her legs up and shuffling down until she is flat on her back with her knees hooked over the arm at one end. She hadn't realised how long she'd been sat there, back hunched, chin in hand, balls of her feet on the ground, taking the weight she was throwing forward. It feels good to stretch out, and the slight pressure from the arm on the backs of her knees is nice. She looks up through the outside skylight. She breathes deeply and traces the neckline hem of her sweater with 2 fingers. She notices the light is waning and thinks about dinner in an unfocused way before allowing herself to address the script. She isn't surprised with the direction Michael has taken it, but the imperialism of the UAE scenes, particularly the anti-Islamic sentiment, is deeply problematic. She has to admit to a level of disappointment never before felt with regards to his writing. Actually, she reminds herself, that's not entirely true. There were those voiceovers in the final episode of season 3 that had made her so uncomfortable at the time, half man, half woman. She feels a resurgent guilt at having let that slide. Her thoughts are interrupted by a low-flying plane. When it comes into view, framed by the skylight, it is so clear, so low, that as it goes over she can see in some detail its underbelly. It's unexpectedly dirty or dusty in places. The whole thing seems significant. Sarah Jessica Parker feels better. She closes her eyes and falls into a light sleep, catalysed by relief. She dreams about tall, non-threatening plants, the colour purple. When she wakes only 40 minutes later, it's dark, and the idea of the plane seems facile. Or is it futile? The two words conflate into less than a half-thought, then disappear against a white background. And the final poem concerns Hans Ulrich Obrist, who is the co-director of the Serpentine Gallery. Zizio. Hans Ulrich Obrist throws bread to the swans in the Royal Park of Kensington Gardens in central London. It's early morning. The bread isn't stale. The swans are not white, they are grey-brown. One of the swans is sitting a good distance away from the main body of the group. It's darker or dirtier than the rest and shows no interest in the bread. Its eyes are closed and its neck is bent at an angle that allows it to rest its head on its back. Hans Ulrich Obrist approaches the swan. As he gets close, the swan opens its eyes and lifts its head. Its neck sways and it lets out a rasp from its grey beak. Hans Ulrich Obrist takes a slice of bread from the bag and tears out a small piece with no crusts, tossing it directly in front of the swan. The swan ignores the bread, but the rest of the group swarms over, trampling the crustless piece and nipping at the bag in Hans Ulrich Obrist's hands. The swan looks resigned. It tries to reposition its head and its back, but misses and lays it on the tarmac instead. It closes its eyes. Hans Ulrich Obrist turns and leaves the pond area. That evening, he is unable to sleep, and the following morning wakes uncharacteristically late at 10:47 a.m. to a series of emails and one missed call from the team at the gallery. He postpones responding and gets dressed. He walks to the park and alerts the warden to the sick swan. He feels no sense of immediate relief, but finds that he is once again able to focus on other things. When he visits the pond area again 2 days later, the sick swan is gone, and he senses that it has been euthanized. The crustless piece of bread is still partially visible, specked with dirt and embedded in the tarmac. It doesn't at all resemble the unmistakable image of Mary Immaculate, Mother of Jesus. A light snow does not begin to fall. Thank you.
I'm just going to read. I had a book come out last year, and now I'm working on another book. And this one is sort of like a novel essay thing about weather and technology and all the things that are sort of mattering right now, I guess. And so I drew from different sections from the book to pull together this reading. So it might not make any sense, and I'm not going to really indicate where things are coming from or why or what narrative is going on. And I tried to pick maybe the most abstract pieces possible. Hey, Brandon. Nice to see you. On the second anniversary of the day Hurricane Sandy made landfall in New York, a well-known curator at a major U.S. institution posted a still from the disaster movie The Day After Tomorrow to his Instagram, writing, quote, 2 years ago, #Sandy hit, making clear how vulnerable the city is. One of the curator's followers commented, great screenshot from The Day After Tomorrow. Funny, people believe it's real. The curator responded, I picked the picture because pictures from movies often seem more real than documents. Then he wrote, the days after the hurricane felt very much like in this movie. And finally, I will post a pic a day this week, but I felt it was good to start with a constructed image, as we all didn't know what was really happening the day/night of the storm until the floods and fires took their devastating toll. Several other users began to comment that the still was nevertheless a fake, leading him to write that the image was a reminder that fiction can be made real. I was evacuated from Rockaway Beach in the midst of planting trees, he wrote, and went to the city and spent Sunday/Monday indoors until the storm was over, watching TV and the news until the electricity blacked out. His final comment, "What did you do?" That was Klaus Biesenbach, just to throw that out there. Ed Halter, writing in Art Forum about disaster films of the 2010s, notes that these films propose a day after tomorrow in which we no longer overcome or survive disaster, but rather enter an age of its permanent management. These are cynical films at heart, he writes, allowing us to fantasize about negotiating survival within a failing system rather than letting us hope to replace it with something better. Their anxieties mirror the just-in-time logic of networked economies, in which a typical day of work consists of the management of multiple crises thrown onto the laps of multitaskers thanks to the unfettered spread of instant connectivity. Halter concludes his essay by quoting Susan Sontag's The Imagination of Disaster, her prophetic 1965 essay on atomic-era films, in which she writes that these works are only a sampling, stripped of sophistication, of the inadequacy of most people's response to the unassimilable terrors that infect their consciousness. I picked the picture because pictures from movies seem more real. I purchased 2 small domestic palms and placed them in opposite corners of my bedroom. I don't get much sunlight in the room, but the woman who sold them to me says they'll be fine because palms like these grow in the dark. She doesn't sell pots large enough to replace the plastic ones they come in, so I set them on top of old plates in case they leak, which they often do when I water them. In 2 weeks, the one in the far corner of my room where the most sunlight hits starts to wilt. Its stalks brown, gathering a fuzzy white dust that clings to the plant, until eventually it collapses in a heap. Gnats gather and bob in the air over its dying body, circling the palm in the concerted manner of a ritual. I wave them away and switch it with the other palm in the room, which was doing fine, though not exactly thriving, and trim all the dead branches of the dying one until it is a third of its original size. The dying plant doesn't come back as I expect it to, and the healthy palm wilts with it, finally falling over as the other did. I move them both into the kitchen, which receives abundant sunlight all day, and water them with Miracle-Gro purchased from the same woman who sold me the palms. After a few days, the move seems to kill them both. I drag them to the curbside of my apartment building, where I leave them for dead. Within a week, they both rise up and sprout new, deep green fronds and rotate upward toward the sky with new life. Someone picks them up before I can bring them in, and they're gone. Blow up the law, Helen Zazou writes. Cops define the era. Sit at the cafe. There is a gym close to here. Dating app, get together, go alone, mood. The problem begins with you, he says. The problem and the conditions that allow it to be identified as such suggest that your role in it is essential and that all of this could be avoided were you to leave. I leave. I repeat that the book I'm reading is called A Fire in the Belly by C. Carr, but he asks why I said Emily. I never said Emily, I tell him, as the subway comes to a full stop in the tunnel between Brooklyn and Manhattan. Generationally speaking, nothing has changed except the coordinates by which we locate the landscape of our politics or the politics of landscape. Upstate, I sit at a dinner in a yard flushed with berry bushes and discuss the MTA's budget surplus. Every budget surplus results from an illusory economy seeking to absorb you within it. During a march across the Williamsburg Bridge in solidarity with Ferguson, Missouri, where Mike Brown's killer had been let off the hook, a poet named Eric Linsker is arrested by the police and charged with punching an officer. He has a bag of hammers with him. The year in destruction, the year of the sheep, the year of those fireworks, the year of palms, the year of guns, the year of email, the year of your car, the year of soap, the year of the alleyway, the year of Aleppo soap, the year of Aleppo, the year of Anakayi, the year of the refrigerator, the year of the father who was gone, the year of the text message, the year of your address, the year in passing, the years in tides. The fake human skull wrapped in saran wrap sits on a pile of other skulls like it. Its yellow plastic makes it look real, or at least has a semblance of reality I find uncanny, a public token and cheap homage to time, Halloween time. And when I pass it, I stop to take a picture with my iPhone and send it to my friend. When she receives it, she writes back, "What is it?" I respond that it's a fake skull on St. Mark's, Happy Halloween, I write. And she responds, the small iMessage bubble floating up to indicate that she's typing, but after a few seconds it disappears and she never writes back. I think to buy the skull, but decide against it, cancel that. Should be drinking water, not beer, but it's the UK or whatever. It's like the same thing. People drink beer for breakfast here. It's really great to see. It really, I don't know, everything makes sense here. Romantic poetry didn't know what it was missing. At Kennedy Airport, I take a seat near a man wearing shredded jeans and a plaid shirt over a sweat-stained white tee. With his hiking backpack leaned up against the smoked glass wall next to him, he looks like he's just walked across the country, evidence of a relationship to nature that might be truer or deeper than mine. I write this down in a notebook thinking I might use it later. Is nature true or deep? Reification of the sublime in his and all those bodies walking about, the airport speakers play Taylor Swift. Tuned to those radio dreams of metropolitan space exhorted by global capital for the purpose of ubiquitous homogeneity come true. Welcome to New York, Taylor sings. It's been waiting for you. Finally risen to the occasion of a world not hers, and yet she self-proclaims her kingdom of the very newly saved. The quaint West Village lights, the cafe on 6. The flight attendants circle the smooth floor and the hiker sighs after what must have been a long trip. I covertly photograph him with my iPhone, but the flash goes off and he notices me. He shakes his head, grinding his square jaw in what seems like irritation, but he doesn't say anything and looks away. I'm grateful he doesn't confront me, so I continue to survey. A little more carefully this time. I turn off the flash, and I capture him. He's poring over a water-damaged journal in which he seems to have written several formal poems, maybe even sonnets in an unreadable cursive. Poetry really is everywhere. For something to be everywhere, it must be online. Conveniently, poetry is all over the internet because the web itself achieves a kind of poetry, rendering most online bodies poetic machines and thereby enacting in the proliferation of that messy language the illimitable sense of a socialized network of busy intersections pervading all discourses, especially critical ones, infusing most things written and said with an enhanced vitality, a kind of poetics, all of it glowing on screens across much of the planet. Or have I been lied to? He closes the notebook when his boarding class is called. It's business, so he's either not a hiker or he's a rich hiker, and he pulls up his backpack, slinging it over his shoulder as he crosses the crowd clustered at the narrow gate and slips into it with an ease that suddenly makes me miss him. I forget the feeling immediately once my class is called and I board a jet to London. Later, over the North Atlantic, I wake up at 4 a.m. East Coast time to see out my window a curvature of gray and blue bent by a watery alien light that resembles the flush of dishwater as it finally drains out of the kitchen sink. There can be no other alien or otherworldly light on Earth, despite any claims that might attempt to release us into some greater fiction. I felt alone, and the flight was mostly empty. I have not always been careful. I have been tricked into cheap flights. A bot has asked me if I wanted to be friends on Facebook, and I have accepted its request. I've opened an email from an acquaintance with a phishing Google Doc attached. I've made dumb admissions of fleeting passwords to scammy sites, unlocked accounts for strangers, signed up for porn, only to realize it was a tricky financial ruse, and accidentally froze my Chase card in Chicago once when I withdrew $200 for drugs at a golf club. Quinine water once spilled over my laptop in Bushwick, destroying the hard drive, which I hadn't backed up. Later, the gentle acceleration of a plane that puts everyone around me to sleep, but always leaves me awake and jittery, bucked my next computer out of my lap and onto the floor, breaking it, and again, I hadn't backed it up. Nothing compares to the hike that overlooks LA, nothing compares to losing all those useless files, and nothing compares to reading Ben's book of poems about debt at Kennedy Airport, where I focused on his interest in the documentary procedures of commerce and our participation in the various markets we rely on, including and especially the job market. I've never kept a job for very long. The preconditions of employment, dedication, being so nearly impossible as to abstract every morning to a timeless, flat plane of actions I can't make any sense of. Brushing my teeth and putting on my clothes, maybe jerking off while staring at myself in the mirror, drinking orange juice or coffee, eating a banana, all of it, or beer. All of it seemingly out of order or finally pledged to a disorder that overrides the desire to put myself together again until I'm late, and too often too late, and I'm encouraged to look for a job elsewhere. Regardless of my disinterest in definitive employment, the pernicious logic of the market still wields its heavy and not so beautiful power over me and everyone else, despite all of our efforts to debunk it. Pleasures do not accrue with accomplishing any task. Your boss is lying to you. I imagine the hiker graduated college and went for a walk, deciding he wouldn't come back. Poems in the cursive of joblessness. To be unemployed is nature. We live in a joyous age. On Facebook, I have recently noticed a series of viral clickbait posts with headlines that assure us we won't believe what we'll see if we click on the link. This woman came home to an intruder in her house. You won't believe what happened next. This man found a sick dog near his home. What he did next will shock you. These posts often lead to nothing or nothing consequential. Other websites that lead to other websites, stupid videos or ads for ab workouts and coupons for groceries, and cheap flights to China. You won't believe what Obama isn't telling you. You will be shocked at this simple trick. I have noticed you are very interested in cheap airfare, including trips to London, Paris, and Beijing. I look up the cost of a flight to Beijing, a city I've always wanted to visit, where my mother went years ago and said it was so unbelievable she could not really explain what it was like in any way that my sister and I could understand. Like words really did escape her. The airfare site loads Beijing's prices, kind of reasonable as you'd imagine on Travelocity.com, the name of which has always been oddly suggestive of some transcendent escape of any present moment, hunched over a laptop or on my phone on the J train. In its argument that travel might be a function of speed only per usual, the site has trouble fully loading all the great deals it promised me when I directed my browser to it, and so I give up, head out to a party on a Chinatown roof. Vape, terror of heights. Vape, the feeling it draws from your stomach and through your asshole as you later approach the ledge of the roof when you're a little too drunk to socialize. Vape those curious hours, swallow them, make eye contact with a dozen boys across the dark roof, lean against the wall while Anton, who's straight and out of money, explains how he came to New York only 6 months ago and now works in a Japanese stationery store in Chelsea called Muji. He's gotten a little lost since his girlfriend left him and moved to Paris. Listening to him talk about the literal and figurative ocean that separates them is similar to the feeling I get when listening to Prince's Nothing Compares to You. In Prince's original version of the song, lyrics divide between a male and a female speaker, suggesting, at least in the reciprocal confusion of longing, that they might at last be someday reunited. Like at least they know they are linked together in mutual song. Without changing the lyrics, but singing both parts by herself, Sinead O'Connor, whose version is perhaps more famous, eliminates the lover and shifts that role to us, turning to face the camera in her music video, turning to those who sit across an unbridgeable gulf split by the screen to confer the impossible weight of absent onto us. Like it's easy, but also such a burden, I'm overwhelmed to the point I could seldom finish watching the video, switch back to Travelocity.com and dream of elsewhere. Earlier, Anton and I had gone through Washington Square Park, sat in the grass for a few hours, and then went our opposite ways home, only to meet up by accident later at the party in Chinatown. We watched jocks throw a ball back and forth in the grass. One of the jocks kept shouting, "Hit me," several times as his partner waited for the crowd to clear a space for them, impatient to keep the game going, a crowd so densely invested with libidinal drive that it never really divided, or in its temporary incoherence, it subdivided briefly but formed elsewhere, among others. "Hit me," he shouted, and then we left. Prince and Rosie become elsewhere while in the spring that overwhelms them, the park's tulips bend toward the light. As it turns out, all the flowers in the backyard have not died, as Prince and Sinead said they did. Rather, they have resituated themselves in the colors that stream toward their sites of radical incoherence, flushed in the afternoon, a place I can never really find, but nevertheless continue to seek. It is sufficient and dense, but must end, or cease to exist, in the consummate declaration of an additional end to the present configuration of the afternoon that encircles me. Later, on the roof, I vaped in view of the World Trade Center. At 9 stories up, the space between the ground and me was entirely poetic. Vertical toward the summer night's cloud, the city fixed itself into it, backgrounded by nothing compares to you, and it's the world. Nothing compares to you, and the slow feeling of its subtlety extracts from me a secondary belonging to whatever sky that relents finally to sunrise, but differs in almost no way from sunset. Exalt that dumb feeling, or else its precious logic collapses in crassly romantic self-possession. Manifest nihilism in the body, summer is the shittiest time for looking cute. Leaning in, Anton whispers to me that I have time when I tell him I'm so tired of having to work, but I'm not sure that I do. Time for what? To chill, he says. At the moment, I check my phone and see that a girl has posted a selfie to Facebook with the caption, "Spring is here, I look like I'm dying, LOL." Reduced to the negligible poverty of remaining Earth available to her, a little frame on a cell phone she's died within, for the cuteness of the world has been vastly damaged. Gasp or whatever. I'll take of it what I can, get high, ask Anton what exactly he means by time. I don't think we have time, he clarifies, or not in a way that isn't fought for. Therefore, implicit in this is the injunction to seek new, still more tenuous martyrdoms via the terms of employment, daily baptism through which we are made eternal pilgrims to global capital's realm of internationalized leisure, various martyrdoms we will survive without the redemptive pleasure of extended vacation. Or rather, it grants us in the flavorless wafer of its inexorable host, our own host body, by which we hobble forward until the endurable progress of this narrative reverses and we are erased from it. The city lights go on. The view has become the same everywhere. You can tell it won't change. Okay, almost done. Now I need the water. It is easy to say nothing. Ooh. Okay, there we go. It is easy to say nothing. Nearly every song I've ever heard says nothing. whether by accident or intention. In Welcome to New York, which often plays on the radio lately, Taylor Swift greets a terrifying nowhere that supposes inclusion while ensuring the door to the city is locked. Rihanna's We Found Love, a song that isn't so current anymore, is the opposite, but to describe either or do the work that insists that these particular evocations of sudden solidarity with others matters now or will in a future that most certainly will never come seems a little flawed. Like you can't stop because the cessation of these interests that supposedly transcend my life for the top 40 or the iTunes top 10 is totally dumb. I suppose I can, but isn't Taylor's best friend Lorde cute when she hunches up Gollum-like to paw at the camera? For some reason, I can't get over her, but I suppose I've always identified with this position. The 16-year-old who, unsure of how to act at the Grammys, only acts, flailing and throwing herself about without coordination or advanced planning, liberated of those constraints of taste that might restrain her from behaving a little dorky on stage. I suppose the intersection of these desires presents a challenge I would like to refuse. I find myself believing that my language is failing me while it succeeds for everyone else, and so flailing about, my vocabulary gets lost in loopy grammar, yet I suspect the generally implied superconnection of language is still achievable if I continue to work at it. Totally not true. But the assumption that no matter what you can always say something remains awfully common, regardless of evidence to the contrary. Grievances of this kind should not accumulate. On Twitter, Jackie Wang has been quoting Hélène Cixous, someone I'm embarrassed to admit I've never read. Wang quotes, "Because she arrives, vibrant over and over again, we are at the beginning of a new history." Wang tweets that Cixous didn't begin to write until she was 27, and I'm trying to remind myself that this is only the beginning. I am too. She continues to write, quote Cixous, "I am spacious, singeing flesh on which is grated no one knows, which I, more or less human, but alive because of transformation." 1 minute later, her libido is cosmic. Just as her unconscious is worldwide, her writing can only keep going. 1 minute later, she goes and passes into an infinity. The same minute, she alone dares and wishes to know from within where she, the outcast, has never ceased to hear the resonance of forelanguage. 2 minutes later, airborne swimmer in flight, she does not cling to herself. She is dispersible, prodigious, stunning, desirous, and capable of others. With this, I am reminded somewhat simultaneously of two unrelated things. One, Kathy Acker's line from Demonology, My Mother, red was the color of wildness and of what is as yet unknown, red being many things for Acker, including nightmare, passion, journeys into the interior, hidden flesh, the unconscious, rage, and violence. And two, Jackie Wang's Against Innocence, her refutation of the liberal politics of innocence, and their direct appeal to the white imaginary, which always upholds the dominant and social and political structure that organizes the bodies of others into the categories of the criminal in order to cleanse urban space for whites. Of course, there's a lot more, and the impulse to summarize is itself a kind of violence, but she's continued to tweet Cixous, and I return to my feed. Quote, "In another, we will never be lacking. A minute later, each body distributes in its own special way, without model or norm, the non-finite and changing totality of its desires. And finally, we're not going to repress something so simple as the desire for life." This afternoon, I walked home in the snow from my boyfriend's and felt a fussy sadness that left me a sludge of indistinct feelings, mostly vaguely about the desire for life, which at the snowed-in moment of a mist blizzard felt stymied, locked in a rented room. The night before, we'd stayed up till 3 a.m. waiting for a potentially historic nor'easter that never came, though what if the blizzard did come to New York, dropped a considerable amount of snow on the ground. Walking through the remains of the night, I thought that maybe there was a poem I'd read at some point about unrealized blizzards, but I couldn't remember who wrote it or if it even existed. Poetry is an idiotic impulse, but it is exactly this quality that makes it worthwhile, linked to idiocy by way of the history of that word, which comes from the Greek and means private person. Poetry is a form of privacy, and everyone knows privacy is so idiotic. Again, grievances of this kind should not accumulate. Thank you.
I fear there is no God. I know there is no God. I fear this. I fear I have no faith. I fear death. I fear love. I fear responsibility. I fear there is no one person I could love completely and forever. I fear myself. I fear my body and brain. I fear my addictive nature and the way it tricks me. I fear my mood swings and instability. I fear money. I fear poverty. I fear my anger. I fear aging. I fear fat. I fear food. I fear relapse. I fear my perversity. I fear my sexuality. I fear I will not get what I fear I want. I fear what I want. I fear I will not get what I need, let alone want. I fear lonely, drunken, drugged up defeat. I fear arthritis. I fear hip replacement. I fear ugliness and stupidity. I fear violence. I fear war. I fucking hate it when I can't get through to you. I fear people. I fear outer space and the Ku Klux Klan and the gas chambers and murder and rape and Vikings on horseback who will slash my spine and rip out my lungs to make the sign of the eagle. My family tree is the hanging tree. My ovaries are baubles for bastards. The ringmaster's ring piece is big as a whale's. The bearded lady cracks a cat o' nine tails. Bring on the feather-plumed horses. Bring on the nipple-studded elephants. Toss the ball-balancing seals. He flashes the dread porno, plastic. He worships the flesh, something drastic. He likes beauty, ugly. He gives circus, raw. He poos, pure zoo. He is larger than you. He knows he needs three of me, sat on his knee. I rearrange the fine design of his spine. I leak lost causes in his lap and mine. What lives a lie inside my mum's drawers? Squidge loads of slime squirming eels. Get a load of her beaver. It's stone cold, for reals. My heart is bigger than the weather. I'm pounding my pulse on God's ceiling. That's how I make the rain. My rain is magic, orgasmic. I got porno juice sluicing my every pore. Dip your glad in my sad. Suck my bad, duck my fad. Truck with no luck in the muck of the mad. Oi, plum, scum my mum, dump her wrinkle, thumb her bum, choke on her glum in the slum of the dumb. Shaken back her habitat hole with 20 intangible claws and the elements of louse. She's got fake furry paws and the whiskers of a mouse. Turn her out of her own inhospitable house. Make her beg for my pardon in the garden. Boil her in a vat of her own congealed fat. Stick her on our medieval hypertense rack. She likes it like that, out the back. I'm a porn bird on a mission. There's nothing I lack. Hear my porn heels go clickety-clack. Feel my porn heartbeat, it's all out of whack. Now, hear my disembodied, candy-sweet little voice, singing these words to the tune of your choice. He lives in flames and when he loves me, he wears my burning roses. A ravish of transcendent Viola. She rots in his well, and when he loves me, we have to hold our noses. A raucous of jeering and laughter. We live in flames, and when he loves me, I wear his burning roses. A reverie of realissimo, pianissimo. We live in deep water, and when he loves me, I wear her rotting roses. A rudeness of farts from my arse. We live in games, and when he loves me, we wear the big red noses. A rinky-dink ring of the bell, and not being her, I ride the sweaty horses. I took my porn star daddy at his word, daddy word. I said, get on with it then. Flunk me in the flummox, stipple me in the workhouse, dunk me in the finners, gift me in the mountains, fickle me in the spouter, skin me in the flattery, nut me in the gutter. I said, I'm waiting, budget me in the outhouse, roll me on the real wheel, deal me in the muttery, bleak me in the misser. I said, oi, Dad, sift my thwarted, liver me loose like. Dad, my dumb jelly wob, pawn the whole starry sky. See if I care, I'll sequin my own sores. I'm right behind you, swinging my glam swell, sniffing the dad smell, sensing my own hell, ringing the cracked bell, flaunting a clamshell. Mum was a bad spell. I laughed when she fell into your cold well, and not being her, I trapeze on the sleaze. Bring on the strong men in their leotards of hair. Bring on the hot hoops of fire. Bring on the poodle who drinks his own piss. Bring on the girl with the incredibly long stare. Penis of a politician, vagina of a virgin, labia of a suicide, cervix of an artist, curious coldness of a dead penis, womb of a witch, hands of a murderer, armpit of an arsehole, left hook of a loser, nipples of a prisoner, bollocks of a donkey, pubis of a mum, perineum of a lover whose mouth you never kiss, vagina of a vampire, penis of a dad, you are finger in a failure, colon of a monster, rectum of an angel, disaster of a heart. The reluctant lips of a junkie, strong insertion of rubbish, soul of a locked ward, intestines of a child, black hole of an addict, tits of an alky, savvy of a poltergeist, big toe of a whore, walls of an asylum, ceiling of a slut, forehead of a psychic, buttocks of a fool, liver of an amateur, penis of a dead girl, manifesting penis, vagina in your mouth, liver of an amateur, vagina of a dead boy, manifesting penis, penis in your mouth. don't want your tragedy hands. I don't want your work on my face. I don't want gloves that reach over the elbow. I don't want drugs that swallow the night. Foxes turn to stone in the alley. Pigeons burst to flame in the sky. There is blood running down the walls. The tower blocks bend and sway. This is where I live. I don't want your think piece, codpiece. I don't want your omnidic luxury. I don't want your in out, in out, in out, in out. I don't want your money. I don't want your love. Foxes turn to stone in the alley. Pigeons burst to flame in the sky. How does real love happen? Get in the safe and sound position, and you will say to yourself, it is real. Every lover fades away or violently deceases. Cancer, car crash, overdose, never-ending coma. Epileptic fit on Sunday, heart attack in Halfords. He fell off a block of flats. She jumped under a train. I live here alone. You are the one who still walks tall. I'll be here when you're beaten. Come to me with chest complaints, bed sores and contusions, on bare feet, empty-handed, all your dreams divided. I will take you in. We'll huddle together in our decline, in my bone dust disco. I'm building a collection of colostomy bags. They reek with the promise of intimacy. In my bottom drawer, next to the pink vibrator, last brandished by you. Turning it on and twirling it above your shining head, you said, I don't believe in you. I don't believe in me. I don't believe in us. I haven't washed it since. I sniff it when I inspect my collection. Remember how he walked proud after claiming you. A gliding walk with not much bend at the knee. I know what he did. He took a lamb's heart from the butcher, smeared it with his semen, wrapped it in your hair, kept it in your fridge that thrummed night and day in his house, made of glass on the cliff. After 9 cold months, he yanked it out, put it in the boot of his car, drove you far away, swearing on the Holy Trinity, eternity, opium, poison. I'll have her if it kills me. Come to me when we are old, I will take you in. I will stroke your papery palms, run my fingertips along your lifeline. It's bitten in deep, curving away, its edges are hard and crusted. I will plait my silvered pubes and loll about in a see-through nightie. I will coat your ruined lips with bright red lipstick. You won't need to ask. I've been told you live hand to mouth in a mountainous region. I've been told the rain paints road maps on your leaking windows. I've been told the sun still shines out your rosy rectum. Come to me, we will be lounging on methadone clouds, wearing wings 3 feet high, so many feathers and